Welcome to Midnight Menu Plus One. I'm Ray Canada.
And I'm Margot Moss. Midnight Menu Plus One is a food lifestyle show on the podcast network, itsneworleans.com. Tonight we're at the NOLA Brewing Tap Room in the Irish Channel.
The tap room is NOLA Brewing's newly expanded, extra awesome on-site watering hole. They serve NOLA's regular lineup of craft beer as well as 8 specialty brews you can't get anywhere else.
The tap room is open 7 days a week, weekdays from 2 to 11 p.m. and weekends from 11 in the morning till 11:30 at night.
We are so glad you could join us. Each week on Midnight Menu Plus One, Margot and I invite a member of New Orleans restaurant and food community to have a beer with us, and we invite them to bring along their own guest, a plus one. We never know who the plus one's going to be. Sometimes it's a friend, a neighbor, a family member, fellow restaurant colleague, just about anybody.
Well, our special guest on Midnight Menu Plus One tonight is Mr. Bob Arsenault of Orleans Coffee Exchange.
Well, I'm really looking forward to meeting Bob, but before we do that, I thought we'd briefly catch up on this week's culinary adventures. Margot, you eat anything worth reporting?
I finally went to Shia.
Oh, yeah?
Yes.
You like it?
I loved it. The tartare was unbelievable.
Oh, wow.
And the foie gras.
Oh, wow.
Delicious. Matzo ball soup with duck.
Nice.
Never had matzo ball soup with duck in it before, and it was fantastic.
I don't know that anybody else in the world makes matzo ball soup with duck except for them, right? I mean, that's got to be original to them, right?
Must be.
Never heard of it. Wow, that's amazing.
So what about you?
I went to a bunch of new places. I thought I'd just highlight a couple noteworthy. Cafe Luna is one of my favorite coffee shops. It's a little casual place in Nashville, a magazine that I'm at a lot, but they started offering breakfast from Friday to Monday, and for a coffee shop, it's probably not going to be very ambitious, but they did this Vietnamese egg sandwich that was kind of cool. And
what makes it Vietnamese?
I can't pronounce it. If I pronounce it, I'm gonna sound stupid. But it's the bread and the ingredients. It's a
pickled vegetables on it and on a banh mi.
Yeah, it's exactly. It's a banh mi that they put it on. Basically, it's basically a traditional egg sandwich, but it's banh mi and it's got a little bit of pickled something on it.
Okay.
So yeah, it's great. And then I had a regular egg sandwich too, or my wife did, and that was great. But then also we went to Haiku, which is in that cursed spot, no longer cursed, hopefully, but the spot where there's been just a cycle of Middle Eastern restaurants next to sort of New York Pizza near Napoleon, a magazine.
Haiku, it's a Japanese restaurant?
Japanese restaurant, and so I heard that it's done by some of the people that were involved with rock and sake. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but it was. I didn't have any particular expectations going into it, and I thought it was really good. The specialty rolls were just great. Everybody seemed to like the Crouching Tiger the best, but we had a whole bunch of different ones, and it was just a great time. Real friendly folks, and it was a blast. We're definitely going back a bunch, and so those are my food adventures this week. Also, my book came out this week too, that Carrie Confidential about the Rolling Elvi.
Oh,
so,
congratulations!
Yeah, so that was that took me away from the eating scene a little bit because I had a bunch of things I had to do with that, but. Yeah, anyway, well, enough of that kind of, chit-chat. I'm dying to hear from Bob and get to know him. Welcome. We're really glad you're here.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks for joining us. So, Bob, I would like you to tell us a little bit about what you do currently and about the business that you are co-owner of, correct? Mm-hmm. So,
jump in?
Yes, just jump in.
Yeah, tell our listeners that don't know what Orleans Coffee Exchange is. Tell them what it is.
We are a specialty coffee roasting company. We've been in business for 30 years. I like to say we're the biggest little coffee company you've never heard of. We're trying to change that. And we've got a roasting facility out in Kenner, as I like to say, Kennebra. And we like to have people come out and give them the nickel tour and see our place. So many people have never seen a coffee roaster or coffee sacks, green unroasted coffee. And we roast and sell coffee to coffee houses all throughout the city, including our friend Greg over at
Greg Hill over at Luna.
Luna. I was there Saturday morning, by the way. He just started that menu you just mentioned this past weekend. That's sort of a beta test he's going through. And coffee houses, grocery stores, some restaurants, Also, we've been the flagship coffee for the Windsor Court Hotel for like 15 years.
Wow.
Now, sorry. When you say green coffee, will you explain to us what that means, that term?
Yep, that's unroasted coffee. So I'll go through this process just really quickly. Coffee's grown on a coffee tree, say in Colombia. It goes from green. They go from a flower bud to a green berry to a yellow berry. Most of them are turned into a red berry. Some are ripe at yellow, but most are ripe at red. People go through the farms and they pick just the ripe red cherry, and the coffee's picked, and they'll typically go through what we'll call a wet process, a wash process, separate the coffee cherry from the seed. There's 2 seeds in there typically, and it'll go through some further processing. I'll skip all that at this point. And it's green. It's a little green seed. And they go through an incredible amount of sorting so that when you have a sack of coffee, say from Columbia Supremo, all the beans are the same color, the same size, are real clean. Coffee's a little smaller, been sorted out. Coffee's really defects, whatever. They've all been sorted out. So this beautiful bag of green unroasted coffee, and that's what we start with.
And so do you actually get to travel around and search for green coffee?
I do. I've been really, really blessed with the opportunity to do that. I've been to Colombia twice, El Salvador twice, Costa Rica, Guatemala twice. I've even gotten to go to Dubai for some coffee education. That was a lot of fun. So it's really fun I've never been to Indonesia or Africa, not yet, but it's very common for people in my position, a green coffee buyer, to travel to what we call source. I travel to source, meet with coffee farmers. Of course, we call them producers, so we meet with producers, taste the coffees there at source, and maybe make a buying decision right there.
So Bob, are you supplying mostly to Orleans customers, or are you supplying? When you roast the coffee, are those roasted beans, now going around the country, or are they mostly staying local?
Most of our roasting production stays local for coffee houses and restaurants, grocery stores here. But we do have a website, orleanscoffee.com. We were I would say we were one of the pioneers in coffee retail websites. We're probably on our 4th version of a website. So we got into that game very early. We've got mail order customers just everywhere. I mean, even out of the country sometimes. There originally was an Orleans Coffee Exchange in the French Quarter, and there were like 6,000 names on a mailing list, all pre-internet, and a lot of that converted over to people buying on our website instead of mail order. But we still have some little ladies who mail in a check with a little order form. We've had customers who've been with us like 20 years.
So coffee shops are using your beans, and then if we go into a grocery store and get your beans, does it have the Orleans Coffee Exchange label on it then in the can, or is it going under other brands and they're using your beans?
Both. We also have another name brand called New Orleans Coffee Works. So if you go into one particular grocery store that has 2 locations, you'll find Orleans Coffee Exchange coffee, brand coffee, and you'll find New Orleans Coffee Works. Right after Katrina, the previous owner of our company bought out our competitor across town, and they were called New Orleans Coffee Works.
Oh, okay.
So there, look, I won't go through the Katrina story. I have condensed that to like 2 minutes from an hour, but I won't go into that unless you need me to.
But I'd like to hear that after this. But
yeah, sure.
Let's talk about that.
So we have 2 name brands, but we do a lot of, co-branding. You can go into lots of coffee houses around town, and you'll see the name. They've got retail under their shop name, but we roasted and packaged that coffee for them.
Okay, so the ones that are under your name, are there several different blends, or is there one blend? How does that work?
We bring in coffees from all around the world, and if I sell a coffee from one country, let's say I'm going to stick with Colombia, okay?
Right.
So it's a single origin coffee, came from one region or one particular farm, and so I'm going to roast that to a medium roast, light nut brown color, and the label on the bag is going to say Colombian Supremo, Orleans Coffee Exchange. Well, other coffee houses can buy the same coffee, so it's going to say Colombian Supremo. But then I may blend that with some other coffees from Central America, and now I've got breakfast blend, or I may have a French roast blend, or we have numerous espresso blends. So if it's not blended, we call it a single origin medium, single origin dark. But then it could be a medium blend or a dark blend. So there's lots of possibilities.
That sounds like it's kind of complicated. How'd you learn this? I mean, there's a science to it, obviously. You've been doing it for a long time, right? You were into beer before this, but isn't that right? But how'd you get into coffee, and how'd you learn all this?
That story. There was a Martin wine cellar downtown a long time ago. It was in the basement of the old Sears building. There used to be, and may still be, a food court down there called Martin's Downstairs Deli. And this other fellow, he came from the original Martin wine cellar on Jerome Street. He and I were the second set of managers. I came in from a little wine shop in Houma. He came in from Martin's Uptown Deli. And so he was running the kitchen. I'm running the little wine department. And there was some really nasty coffee that they were serving there. I won't say the brand. And the outgoing manager said, well, you need to go check out this little coffee house uptown. So I went to check this out because I just drank, one brand of coffee pretty much my whole life, And that's all I ever drank, And so I tasted this coffee, and it's like, I'm saved. It's like, this is phenomenal. This is unbelievable. And I could never go back to what I drank before. So I really got sucked into specialty grade coffee, and it just tasted so much better. And so I eventually went to work for that company, that brand company, and that was PJ's. So this is back when PJ's had 3 locations.
Oh, wow.
Under the original ownership, the original roasting facility, and I was a full-time manager at K&B Drugstore. I used to wear a purple vest, I wish I still had that, but and so...
Oh, that'd be priceless on eBay, yeah.
Right. So I went a while...
It's like having Napoleon's death mask or something. That would be just awesome.
But anyway, I moved on to another job, and trying to make a long story short here, I went to work for PJ's part-time while I had my full-time job at K&B, and after a month of that, I got offered the job to be the production manager. So I was there for 6 years. So when I left, we had opened up another company-owned stores and then like 10 franchises. So our roasting, that's when I really got introduced to coffee from Colombia, Costa Rica, Guatemala.
So is PJ's
Sumatra.
roasting its own
in PJ's, yep. PJ's has always roasted their own coffee. They've got a roasting facility over in the Bywater, and I'm friends with the roaster, green coffee buyer over there, St Joan's, good guy.
Oh.
So did Phyllis Jordan start PJ's?
Mm-hmm.
Is that, and I never knew that they roasted their own coffee.
PJ's has always roasted their own coffee, and so I left there after 6 years and started Covington Coffee Works downtown Covington with the original owners, and then I left after about 2.5 years, and one of the owners ended up moving the company to Kenner and took on some business partners to move it here, and we were all doing pretty much the same thing as what we do now. And then Katrina hit. Here's the story, So after 2.5 years of Covington Coffee Works, I went to work for Orleans Coffee Exchange, and we moved a few years later to Broadmoor area near the Blue Plate Mayonnaise building.
Yeah.
And they say New Orleans is like a bowl. Well, I think we were at the bottom of the bowl.
Yeah.
We took on 6 feet of water that took at least 2 weeks to drain out.
Wow.
And we went in right before the hurricane. That Saturday morning, we all went in and started sandbagging because we would get some flood water all the time.
Right.
And really all the sandbags did was stop the water from going out so fast. When it started to drain, it just took that longer to drain. It had to go through our sandbags. So we lost that roasting facility, but our crosstown competitor had no damage.
Wow.
Didn't lose anything, didn't lose employees, but the previous owner of our company at that time, he bought them out, and we moved in October 15th, 2005. We picked up where we left off and brought some of our old staff back, and we've been through a lot of people, a lot of changes, and rebuilt our customer base, and and doing our best to serve the best coffee we can in town.
Wow, that's pretty early. October 15th. That was I came back to visit that week, and it was a wreck still.
We were in that little interim. We did have a company in Baton Rouge, River Road Coffees, took us in. It took me in. In our industry, we're all across the country. There's a really strong peer group. So I was able. I knew the owner and his son. I was able to call and say, "I'm SOL. Any chance I can roast some coffee in your facility?" So I was, I had to evacuate to Lafayette. So I was driving from Lafayette to Baton Rouge every day for a month to the other side of Baton Rouge. And so I was roasting coffee when that company wasn't roasting coffee, and I was packing coffee when they weren't. So this went on for a month, and that's really the hardest month of my life. But we still had customers who weren't affected, and they needed coffee. And so I was pulling, 15-hour days back and forth between the two towns. And again, during that process, the previous owner of our company made a deal with New Orleans Coffee Works, and we moved in.
All right. Well, it looks like your plus one is here, and it's probably a good time to introduce him. Tell us why you selected him and who he is.
Well, this gentleman sitting to my right is Kurt Nittmeyer. He is probably the real only Orleanian, true Orleanian in our company. He states that he's the only one in our company who's born and raised and currently living in New Orleans. All of us are from somewhere else. I'm from down the bayou, as they say. Or somebody's from the North Shore or River Ridge. So Kurt Nittmeyer, and Kirk's been in the coffee business a long time before he came to work for us. And he was a manager at Cafe on V right around the time of Katrina. He's told some fantastic stories of things went on. And
I love that place. That is a zany place.
So he was managing on V at that zany time. And Kirk's worn many hats with our company over the years. And right now he's our barista trainer, like a customer service analyst, helps people figure out what they want to do for their own coffee house, equipment they need. Lots of, you need somebody to make a great cappuccino and foam milk properly, and Kirk is excellent at doing that. He's a great trainer, great educator.
All right, well, welcome.
Hi.
I could not hear what place you worked at before you were at Orleans Coffee
On
Exchange.
V?
I was at Cafe on V.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about your experience there. And
Well, I was actually hired there as kind of a dishwasher utility prep guy. There was a girl behind the bar that I wanted to get to know a little better. Asked her what she was doing behind the machine, told me she was making a cappuccino. I had her make me one.
had you had a cappuccino before?
I had not. I had drinking specialty coffee a few times, but never really crossed that barrier into the more of the fancier drinks. It was exactly that. They were the fancier drinks. At that point, probably within 3 or 4 months, I was kind of shooting towards manager. Managed it.
She must have been super hot.
She was.
Or you just loved coffee?
A little of both, I guess.
She have a lot of tattoos. The girls there tend to have a lot of ink these days.
She did indeed.
Like yeah, there we go. I knew
cool
it.
haircut, cool boots, the whole 9 yards.
That's pretty much all of them there, yeah.
Was that exotic to you, or were you a New Orleanian who
No, I mean, I
grew
was
up uptown? And
I was raised on the Point, so
Okay.
I mean, the French Quarter at that point is your backyard. I mean, you just have to get home before the ferry shuts down.
Yeah.
So no, she wasn't that exotic, but it was interesting enough to talk to her a little bit more. She made me a cappuccino. I was like, wow, this is great. Kind of taught me the ones and twos of espresso. And a couple of months after that, I was managing. I did that well before and well after the storm. And then I started working for Bob in June of 06.
I love that part of Decatur, that end of Decatur right before Esplanade. That's one of my favorite places to hang out. And Envie is special to me. I went there to meet a voodoo princess once, and she didn't show up.
princess
but instead,
or priestess?
You know, she called herself a princess. That made it even more interesting to me because I'd heard of a priestess before. So, but she didn't show. She stood me up for about 2 hours. But in the meantime, I met Delta Burke's mom, who was going in there. She looked just like Delta Burke, only had blonde hair, and she carried a lap dog.
And who would make that up?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, like if you're gonna make up being somebody's mother,
why would you say Delta Burke?
Yeah,
exactly.
So
No, I believed her
I
for
believe
sure.
you.
No, I knew it before she said anything because she and then a homeless guy, and then there was a piano guy. I mean, it was the craziest day of my life while I was waiting for this princess, and never showed up. It was better. It was better. That place is nuts.
And for me, it kind of went full circle. I think I bought one of my first 40 ounces of beer when I was 11 or 12 from French Market Grocery.
Yeah.
And then I used to work at Anjali down the street. So
Nice.
I've been on that block for a long time.
Well, Envy has a liquor license too, right?
They do now,
They sell
yes.
drinks now
Yes,
too.
they do.
Yeah, in addition to the coffee.
So it was, a fun trip.
So you're the New Orleanian, but they obviously, if you had a bunch of people working there who the French Quarter was their backyard, it could be a wild place. But you don't have any crazy experiences like that at y'all's.
Not so much.
We're just trying to run a business, trying to make everybody happy.
So now you said he does training for baristas too. Is it now I get you roast beans and you're selling beans to grocery stores, but then why are you training baristas as well? Is that another service that you do, or how does that work?
Kirk, could I let you answer that one?
I always say it's in our interest for you to make the highest quality drinks. Therefore, you sell more. Therefore, you buy more.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I
So
mean,
you find a lot of coffee shops need barista training, and are there other places in town that will train them formally?
I don't know about a formal training. I'm sure anybody with experience always wants to kind of tell people what they know. But it's not very organized. It's much more the seat of the pants. Somebody just stops in and says, hey, this is what you're doing wrong, and nobody really wants to hear that. So we always try to come and talk about how we can improve them.
Huh.
So here's a little background on what Kirk was talking about. Our company is a member of an organization called Specialty Coffee Association of America, SCAA. It's 25 years old, tens of thousands of people around the world in the organization, obviously mostly stateside. And we have two subgroups, Roasters Guild and Barista Guild. Now, I've been a Roasters Guild member since its inception, and I've been to we have a retreat every summer. And
Wait, is this a local thing or a national thing?
This is a national thing. So we have these retreats at a nice big lodge. And
What do you do at the retreats?
we drink a lot of beer. But no.
I was going to say you drink a lot of coffee and then you're up all night.
We drink some coffee, yeah. But it's a great, bonding experience.
How big is the retreat?
Probably 150 attendees now, and it's big. I mean, we turn people away every time. Now they're talking about having 2 retreats a year, but the SEA staff is like maxed out because they have the Barista Guild has what they call a barista camp, and they're two a year, 4, and it just the staff, is just burned out at all their traveling. So you see, we teach people, they're at our event. We teach people how to roast, and there's a lot of sensory perception classes, sensory skills, lots of education history. So we're teaching a lot of people about roasting at different levels. We have level 1, 2, 3. Barista Guild has 3 or 4 levels as well. So you can learn there's basic levels of information you've got to learn to be a barista, to operate an espresso machine. Kirk, I'd like Kirk to take a minute and talk about that. But so there's a skill building level of making beautiful latte art, but you're learning how to operate the machine, how to operate grinder if the shot's not right, how to know that you've got to adjust the grind or whatnot, and to learn about coffee so you can talk to the customer about the coffee that you're actually brewing. You're having a dialogue while you're fixing their grinder, pulling them a shot just right so you have a beautiful cappuccino. So this is a skill level that has just quantum
so that
leaps.
association is who's declaring you level 1, 2, or 3?
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't declare myself level 3, or I guess I could, but the accreditation's coming from your group. So most baristas in town are not accredited with your group, right? Or with anybody, probably, right?
Probably not. And Kirk is involved in training people. We want to try to get more people from our area. We're still part of that flyover country.
Right.
You've got the West Coast that's just so far ahead of us, and then here comes New York and Chicago,
right.
and so we're catching up. And there are some great baristas in town. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of people with skins on the wall that are really good at it. and Kirk is part of the growth of educating people how to become a great barista, and we want to grow in training more people to do that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it seems to me like, I mean, our town clearly, I mean, I don't know what the stats are, but we clearly have more, and at least the parts, say, below Claiborne to me, we have more coffee shops per capita for population. I mean, I have 5 within 5 blocks of my house, 5 independent coffee shops within 5 blocks, you know? We got so many, and New Orleans has always had, I mean, I've read stats about before the Civil War, there was like 150 coffee shops in the French Quarter.
But Ray, they weren't drinking coffee. it was just a coffee cup.
Yeah. But
they were filling it with booze or whatever.
But we're probably not on the cutting edge in terms of like the trends in high-end coffee, like the third wave kind of stuff that people talk about all the time in Seattle and all that. Can you talk about third wave and what that means and how that relates to New Orleans?
You want me to start and you finish?
Sure.
I don't have the exact definition of third wave, but one of my closest colleagues coined that phrase. A lady named Trish Rothgeld.
What were the first 2 waves?
Well, you're going back to just regular coffee, just plain coffee. There's nothing really special about it.
Somebody just get a hammer and bashing some beads or something, pouring water over it. Is that was
and
first wave?
And then we had all these coffee houses in the 70s and 80s, and it's flavor coffee and it's really dark roasted coffee. And there wasn't really a lot of skill with brewing coffee. An espresso machine, I mean, maybe somebody knew how to make a cappuccino, maybe. Nobody really knew what they were doing. But now with the third wave is you've got emphasis on they say farm to table. Well, we still have our farm to the final cup, seed to cup, and so there's an emphasis on the producer, the farmer, asking and helping that producer to produce better coffee. What do they have to do to produce better, high quality coffee? Far better roasting skills than people did in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and proper use of that coffee. Pulling a great shot, making a great cappuccino, and Kirk can take it from there.
It really is like that. It's really about the coffee. Every coffee is going to have subtle changes and subtle differences, and it's about kind of highlighting those attributes, sometimes trying to mask them if need be. It's basically, in the simplest terms, it's just really about the coffee, where this coffee prefers this brew method, and we're not going to do any other brew method because this is the way it's best. This is the way we can raise the value of this product. We always kind of joke to say that the only thing we can ever do is make it worse. Every so often we get a chance to make it better, and you do that through proper science, proper ratios, just taking a different approach to it.
So it's about the equipment too, that's being used in the coffee shops. I mean, certain equipment's markedly better at finessing the beans and getting the most out of it than other equipment, or
really it's the amount of control. Usually the nicer the equipment, the more control you have. So you have more of an opportunity to hit the mark, but on the same page you have a more opportunity to miss it. So if you're not well trained, you're just getting a 16-year-old behind of an F1, Formula race car.
All right, I have a question. I don't know if this is odd, but is coffee can it be like wine or beer? And is there etiquette of what you can eat with it? Or, I mean, are there things like that elevate coffee or take away from the flavors? Or does that make sense? I don't know how to. I mean, that's not part.
Well, I mean,
of the,
certainly different.
That's a really
cultures.
good point. I mean, you drink red wine with the wrong meat, and everybody raises an eyebrow at you or whatever. And it's like that with beers too. Certain beers get paired with certain foods, but you never hear about that with coffee.
I do believe that there have been many attempts to have coffee and food pairings, and I do believe if you really put it under the magnifying glass, I can say, yeah, this Ethiopian yogurt chef, with its unique lemony notes, citrusy, floral, it could work with these various pastries, perhaps. Something for dessert that I could say it would be the coffee to have with a lemon icebox pie. But I mean,
yeah, I mean,
but I don't think it's really gained a lot of ground because, look, you want a cup of coffee, You want a bagel? You want a muffin? That's what it's going to go with.
Now, how much coffee do you all drink? How much do you drink a day, Kirk?
In the way of drip coffee, probably somewhere below 20 ounces. It's a lot of small cups and small sips of different coffees. In the way of espresso, 3 to 4 espressos a day from varying different shops.
Oh, okay. How about you?
He's zooming.
Oh.
He's zooming all the time. He drinks about a gallon. I drink far less than I used to. I'll be honest with you. I've got that cup. I wake up in the morning, and I'm grinding my 60 grams of coffee and putting it in my Technivorm brewer, and make a cup of coffee and go shave and shower, and I drink that in the morning, and then but I no longer have a cup in the car. I'm not in the travel mug. I don't have to fill that up anymore. But like Kirk, I'm just tasting it all throughout the morning. But I'm at the point that I feel that caffeine in my veins. If I drink coffee too late in the afternoon or really in the evening, I feel it the next morning. That's when I realized I needed to kind of dial it back a little bit. So,
wait, are you telling our listeners to drink less coffee? What are you doing?
No, I'm just telling them that I drink a little bit less coffee.
You're supposed to lie to us and tell us, like, yeah, the more I drink, the better I feel. And I find that
up
doesn't
until
affect
noon.
my sleep at all.
Up until noon. So yeah, I'm
Yeah.
drinking.
Okay.
And now my associate Jeannie Kennedy, she and I are the green coffee buyers, and so we do something called cupping coffee. And so as often as we can throughout the week, we will either do a quality control cupping, or I'll have some samples from an importer that I've roasted, on Monday afternoon, and then Tuesday morning we're going to set up these cups, pour coffee, measure out coffee into the cups, grind it, fill it up with hot water, we call it, slurp and spit. And so we're getting now, we're not drinking all this because we'd be buzzing if we were drinking it, but we're tasting a lot of coffees.
So you're like a sommelier. You have like a little thing. You're spitting it out.
So they do that so they don't get drunk, and we don't swallow, so we're not just buzzing. Because when you do, you just get such an intense. It's like just shooting up caffeine in your veins. And
I got cut off from a coffee shop once for having 10 cups of coffee in one place. She wouldn't serve me anymore, but I never felt an effect from it really.
I think
are there people that are immune to caffeine?
I'm 53. I think when I hit 50, I realized, okay, that cup of coffee after dinner, I feel it the next morning. That's when I realized I need to dial it back a little bit. But no, I think I drink a respectable amount of coffee up until about noon. Maybe I'll have a little coffee in the afternoon.
So now, have you ever had one of those cuppings where you went, oh my gosh, what's wrong with this? Like something went terribly wrong with it. You spit it out. It was awful. And you thank God that you didn't ship those off to somebody who lost a customer. Like, can something go terribly wrong with the roasting? Like a measuring, some kind of dial breaks, or you get a bad shipment that's infested with something, or
we try to take care of that on the front end where we're cupping samples of coffee, and this has happened a lot where I'll get samples from importers, and I will roast and cup coffees I have no intention of buying because I want to taste it. I just want to know what it is, and the people sitting around the table, Kirk cups coffee with us, and we all have our interpretations of the fragrance. Coffee's ground coffee, dry. I get the fragrance out of that. Right. You fill that cup up with hot water, and it's sitting there, and you're smelling it. That's aroma, because fragrance comes off of things that we don't consume, like perfume or flower petals. But once there's water on that coffee, the smell changes a little bit, and I get maybe something kind of savory. So aroma comes off of things we consume. Gumbo soup has an aroma. Roast beef has an aroma. And so we go through this process of fragrance, aroma, flavor, body, acidity, and we'll taste coffees that can be just horrific. It can be, there's a term called phenolic. It's like, this tastes like rubber, or it smells like rubber or beef. It's like, this coffee's phenolic. It's defective.
So you're catching that before too much of that's been roasted.
No, before I've ever even bought it.
Oh, okay.
I mean, this is an importer that's sending me samples, whether I requested them or not. It's like, nope. And they may just try to unload something. They're just trying to get rid of something. But typically, if I get something that's supposed to be good, that smells or tastes kind of funny, it's I let them know. This is them knowing what I like and what I want. So I have that relationship. Like, you're not going to send me samples of something is not in the category of what I want. Definitely nothing garbagey. And every now and then we'll taste something just for fun and go, oh, no, I'm glad I didn't buy that.
So, is there any coffee grown close to us, like in the United States, or no? Is that it?
Puerto Rico?
Okay.
They got that small little mini farm in Santa Barbara, California.
Really?
A couple of years back, they realized that this one small section near the ocean of Santa Barbara has a very similar microclimate to other coffee growing regions. So a few years back, they planted some trees and waiting to see what happens.
Interesting. Well, I mean, every town with tourists in America seems to shoot up a winery, whether it's good or not, you know? I mean, you wonder why that doesn't happen with coffee, too. You'd think there would be some bad coffee being grown somewhere and they'd have a coffee, any place with a hill or something would have a coffee place, but I guess that hasn't happened yet.
Altitude thing? It's altitude?
Yeah. And, in coffee-growing countries, Colombia, Guatemala, coffees at lower altitudes, they don't taste all that well, and they don't demand or command the price of coffee grown at a high altitude. And there are different levels. There's sort of cutoffs. So there's like high grown and then strictly high grown. And so, because the coffee doesn't have to struggle to grow at low altitudes, it grows real easily. So it's like, it's kind of, this is cool, this is good. Put on a little fat, kind of flabby. Boring. Coffee's just boring. Just like the wines, when wine at higher altitudes where there's less water, and they have to struggle more. Where the grapes, I'm sorry, you say this right. Where the grapes have to struggle to grow, the flavors are more concentrated and command more.
I love that. I'm interrupting you. I'm sorry, but that's a beautiful metaphor.
Yeah.
Like, they have to struggle at growing, and that makes the coffee more full-bodied and
higher
like
altitude.
people.
The more you struggle, the more the coffee struggles, the more those grapes struggle, the better they're likely going to taste if they're handled well.
Have either of you guys ever had that coffee that comes out of the elephant's ass? You know what I'm talking about?
The elephant's ass?
No,
it's supposed
the cat.
to be.
We had to.
No.
Cats
They've got
Civet
elephant
cat.
and bird and bat.
No, there is. The most expensive coffee beans in the world, I think, are these ones that are, the elephant will consume them and then they pick them back out of the poo and they roast them. They clean them and they roast them.
Okay, hold up.
Yeah.
It's super expensive.
Okay. There's coffee that comes from an elephant and a cat.
A civet cat, like in Indonesia, and I think this all remember the movie? What's the movie? The Bucket List. And Jack Nicholson's character drinks this coffee called Kopi Luwak. Okay, and it comes from a civet cat. And this is the way you go through the jungle and you find the poop from the civet cat and you take the beans out of it because it likes eating that cherry. That fruit is good. I've eaten it. It's good. And
From the cat butt?
No, I'm getting it off a tree.
He meant he's read the
And
beans.
I think, and then it's like, somebody would buy this. So here's the problem: is that now that they'll catch these cats, they cage them, they give them a steady diet of coffee beans. So now it's like hens, eggs.
It's not like free range.
no free range.
for the cats.
And so this is like this Kopi Law, and it is really like the most
Wait a
expensive
second.
coffee in the world.
You give me an idea. I could get.
No,
we're getting a cat. I could feed my cat
No.
beans. And no, this wouldn't work for me.
No, it would not work. And here's the thing. Like, I had somebody just this past week say, hey, Bob, I can get you some Civet Cat coffee. And I explained, like, this is just the most unethical product in the coffee business. And it's like in our industry, most of us have this, unspoken bond never to buy that coffee. Don't ever buy it. Don't ever roast it. Don't ever, don't
Really?
promote it. This
It
is like
makes sense.
free the
It's
cat.
like-
So it's like the faux gras of coffee.
Yeah. And it's like free the civet cats and let them go live their lives because we don't want to
What
buy
about
this
the elephants?
product
They
from
do it
you.
to elephants too?
Maybe so. And there's some other
All right, so
Birds
monkeys
and bats.
monkeys too, huh, Kurt?
I know they
Probably
make
so.
makeup out of bats.
What about people? Could we
Let's
swallow
don't-
the red
no,
beans?
I'm not even going to go there. I don't know.
Why not?
sir. Who wants that?
We had to
who wants
go down. We had to
But
just
that'd be
lower
easier
the
though.
level of this show.
Okay, so let me
Nope.
segue from that.
Who wants to
From
eat that?
coffee in crap to crappiest coffee. Who makes the crappiest coffee?
I don't think we're allowed to say
Oh,
that.
you can say.
No.
What's going to happen?
I'd
It's your
like to say-
opinion. You're allowed to have an opinion like anybody else.
Prison coffee.
I would say prison coffee.
Prison coffee.
Prison coffee sucks.
Let me
Great
explain
answer.
this. Are the
Why
government?
does it suck worse than
what
like Folgers?
It's what
Like,
the
why is
it's what the military. That's really bad. Here's the deal. So you go to any coffee growing farm in the world, really. And there's the importers who want the best stuff, and
Right.
they're on there. They come and see you on a regular basis. They get first dibs at the best stuff. And then there's the people who want something like, well, I'm not going to pay that, but I want the next level of quality. Well, there's guys. They're just waiting around for the end of the year when all the good stuff's been picked out and it's what's left, and it's called triage. And it's broken beans, it's black bean, everything that got sorted out that's garbage. They're just waiting when it's like, okay, we're done with all the good coffee, let's get rid of the stuff. These guys just want the garbage. So there's a market for everything. So at the end of the year, the farms are just wiped clean, like nothing ever happened, and somebody bought all the garbage coffee, and all of that is going to get roasted up for instant coffee. It'll be roasted for coffee flavoring,
My grandmother used to drink Sanko when I was a little kid. That's all that, huh?
It's just junk. So it'll get okay. So there you go. Roast it. No. Decaffeinate it. Roast it. And then freeze dry it. There you go.
Well, how do you decaffeinate coffee? Do you pour some chemical over it? What does that mean?
There are a few decaffeination plants around the world. Swiss water process started in Europe, obviously. There's also a Swiss water plant in Vancouver, in our Canadian friends process. There's a plant in Houston. There's a plant in Mexico.
Yeah, what do they do to it?
Just imagine a giant washing machine. And you'll just fill up the coffee. And typically it's not really good fresh coffee. It's something we call like past crop, something that didn't sell, kind of sat around, nobody bought it for some reason. So it gets old and stale, and they'll put it in this giant washing machine, and they'll fill it up with warm water. And it just kind of loosens the fiber of the coffee beans. And then they can put a trace amount of a few chemicals. Now, Swiss water process doesn't use any chemicals, so there's some magic in how the caffeine is extracted from that. But let's use one, for example, methylene chloride. Trace amount of methylene chloride can go in there. Caffeine will bond with it, and then
Drain it? I'm sorry.
Yep, and and then you go through the spin cycle. Okay, so all the water's being drained out, and you go through the spin, it just sucks all the water out of there.
It's got to take other things out besides just the caffeine.
A lot of flavor.
Yeah. So if you got a really, really high end, you got the elephant crap beans or whatever, right? You got the best beans in the world, and you decaffeinated them for some reason. Would they taste any better than these crap beans you're talking about that get decaffeinated? Pretty much it's the same at that point, right?
Yeah.
So why would you use a high quality bean? You'd only use a crappy bean, right?
Exactly.
I mean, you're not going to decaffeinate good coffee. You want to try to get the most amount you can for that.
Right.
But if there's something, there's something wrong with, you got 10 containers of coffee and they're just not just like awesome, and they sit around for a year or so, they'll get sold to a company that'll decaffeinate them, and it'll be fine. But methylene chloride actually is probably like the best tasting chemical processed coffee. Now, you'd have to drink about 40 gallons a day for like 10 years to have any residual effect of the methylene chloride, and but great tasting decaf.
Yes, that's another thing. The decaffeinated coffee not only tastes like crap, but the chemical's probably not good for you either. It can't be.
Well,
No, that's what I said.
You'd have to drink a lot of it.
How do you know that, though?
It all gets, it all gets totally, dissipated at 400 degrees. It's roasted above 400 degrees. You'd have to drink this forever to have any residual effect in your body.
Well, we're running out of time. We have 2 minutes left, but I got 2 quick questions for you, and I don't know if Margot has some too. But one is just what are the stats in terms of like how much of the nation's raw coffee is imported through New Orleans? Do you know?
Do you know?
I don't know, but I know a fair amount. But a lot of what we get is kind of what we're talking about.
Okay.
I don't want to necessarily say it's prison grade, but a little bit of the lower quality
But then
stuff.
also there's big roasting plants like New Orleans East and other places that roast for the big companies that are making mass-producing coffee for the whole country. And a lot of that's done in New Orleans as well, right?
That's right.
You're talking about some more cottage stuff, but I mean, there's also the big stuff too, right?
Well, here's the answer to your question. New York, Houston, and New Orleans all vie for like number one importer every year. So they all they're all in the top 3 every single year.
Okay.
So we all import about a third of what comes in. And we bring in just some commercial grade coffee, some specialty, but a lot of commercial grade. And what's great is that that coffee comes in from Central South America, comes into the port, goes to that Folgers plant you're referring to, gets roasted, processed, and shipped across the country. So it's a good decision for Folgers to be here.
Right. So they're roasting other people's coffee too, not just their own, probably.
Just
their own. Okay.
Just their own.
And then, we only have a few seconds left. So, and also chicory. Explain to us about chicory. That's sort of a New Orleans thing.
That's all you,
I
Bob.
think. But the origin of that and why that came to be in New Orleans and what you think about that, and et cetera, et cetera. Are you involved in chicory at all? You have any chicory coffee you do?
We have 3 coffee and chicory blends. And chicory, I think people figured out that chicory had lots of good usage over the course of a few thousand years. But at this point, primarily cultivated in Flanders, France, near the northern France, near the Belgian border. Although also in South Africa and Nebraska, go Cornhuskers. And roasted, it's grown like potatoes, yams, so it's cultivated, clean, sliced, dehydrated, roasted, ground, looks like coffee. It just looks coffee. And when we brew coffee, it has an extraction level. So we extract 18 to 22% of soluble solids out of the coffee. Chicory has a higher soluble rate, so you extract more of the chicory when you brew it. So when people like their coffee and chicory, it's like, yeah, you're getting strong coffee. It's got a lot of body. It adds body to the coffee, but there's no caffeine. So your caffeine content is like, yeah, I drink coffee and chicory, but it's not caffeine. You're not getting more
So it's bolder
caffeine.
and less caffeine.
Bingo.
Yeah, that's great. And it's a little cheaper too, isn't it?
Little cheaper.
Yeah.
It's a good filler.
But
So
I
it's
thought,
all good.
so it's not true that they use chicory to extend the coffee?
I mean,
during
you can use it as a filler.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
if
during
you've
the
only,
Civil War, is that true that it was used in the? And I thought it so it wasn't because it was caffeinated. It was just because it extend
tasted better than adding dirt.
Okay.
Yep. When coffee got hard to obtain, shipping lines are cut off. Chicory could get through, and it came down here. And here's our French. Wherever French culture resides, there's chicory there. So strong French culture here, and so even when coffee became available again, people like their chicory.
Wonderful. Well, unfortunately, y'all, it looks like we've run out of time. But before we go, would you just share your website with our guests and listeners?
OrleansCoffee.com.
OrleansCoffee.com. Okay, great.
All right. Well, our special guests tonight on Midnight Menu Plus One were Bob Arsenault and Kirk Gipmeyer. Nipmeyer. Sorry, Nipmeyer of. Let's record that again. Can we do that again? Our special guest tonight on Midnight Menu Plus One was Bob Arsenault and Kurt Nipmeyer.
No, start
One more
over.
time.
What did I say? Arsenault.
It's Arsenault.
See, I tried to spell it phonetically, and that screwed me up. I should have just left it alone with the EUX. Okay, our special guest tonight. This never happens. Our special guest tonight on Midnight Menu Plus One was Bob Arsenault. Barb, now I'm changing your gender. One more time. Our special guest tonight on Midnight Menu Plus One was Barb Arsenault. What did I say?
again.
I can't do it. You do it. I can't do it. It's crazy.
Our special guests tonight are.
Yes, why don't y'all do it?
I'm your special guest tonight. My name is Bob Arsenault.
And I was your +1, and I'm Kirk Nipmeyer.
Wow, that was rough. You can find out more about both of our guests and much more about Orleans Coffee Exchange by following links on our website. It's neworleans.com.
And thank you tonight to our friends at Petite Pet Care for pet care when you're not there. Contact petitepetcare.com.
And the NOLA Brewing Tap Room, which is open 7 days a week. You can come here anytime, or you can join us back again next week for another Midnight Menu Plus One.
Thank you very
y'all
much.
so much
thank
for
y'all.
joining us.
You know Labor Day signals the unofficial end of summer, but not the end of your outdoor projects. Lowe's helps you do it right and helps you save with Labor Day deals throughout the store. Shop now and get 2 bags of Stay Green Potty Mix for $12. And keep your lawn looking neat and trim with a Craftsman 2-cycle 17-inch gas string trimmer, now $20 off at just $119. Whatever's still on your to-do list this Labor Day, do it right for less. Start with Lowe's. Offers valid through 8/28. Soil offer excludes Alaska and Hawaii, U.S. only.